Hello, everybody, and welcome to the February 15th, 2022 iteration of the Kubernetes SIG Windows community meeting. As always, these meetings are recorded and uploaded to YouTube, so be sure to adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct. Okay, in terms of announcements, I guess still the most important upcoming milestone is still 124 code freeze, which is March 30th, 2022. I guess the other announcement is I believe that after the next set of patch releases, 120 is going out of service. So if anybody's still running 120, consider updating clusters. And I think that that's scheduled to release next week. And I think with that, was that the last release that we were supporting one of the SAC releases? Do you remember, James? Is one of the, does that roll off one of the SAC releases that we were supporting? I'll have to check. We can check that next week.
I think at this point we're supporting 20H2
only, yeah. And Windows Server 2019 and 2022 still. That's, yeah, if anybody has any announcements, feel free to add them or call something out. Another announcement is Prometheus, the Windows exporter support has merged. This was kind of a long process, but it's another kind of, I think, success in bringing feature parity between Windows and Linux up since, and I think a lot of people have been asking for this and using this. And I think James also was going to do a demo today, so I'll save some of that for the demo. Does anybody have anything else to talk about for the agenda? If not, I can hand it over to James and he can demo some of that work.
Yeah, so a future version of the GMSA admission webhook will have a configurable port. So thanks for approving that and getting that merged in. So that'll allow you to run as a non-root user, because right now you have to bind to 443, which can only be done as root. And even if you try to do capabilities, they didn't work to do that binding. So now you can at least configure that if you need to run it as a non-root user. Now, how well that works, or if there's any edge cases around that, I'll find out. Basic stuff seemed to work just fine, but you know, it's one of those things that's going to take a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for digging into that and all of the work we've been doing in the GMSA space. So, and I think there's a PR to deploy all of this with a Helm chart too. So if anybody is interested, feel free to take a look. I think James and myself have been slowly reviewing it. I think that'll help ease the deployment instead of just asking people to blindly run a script that does a bunch of things.
Yeah, and that's I did some more work with just getting the make stuff set up yesterday and push that up. And then you know, there's a couple other things. So if there's some configuration that you don't agree with, if you look at it, just let me know and we can make some tweaks. I got to get the testing stuff set up and some of the automation, and that's also left on that one, hopefully.
Excellent. Yeah, no worries. This is all helpful.
So I just have one question, Mark, this is regarding the Containerd CNI support. I think I started a thread where James is helping, and we are trying to discuss if we are missing any commits in the Win overlay. I think look like SDN overlay works. So we are trying to discuss that with James and I think David, I guess tomorrow. Probably we will keep you guys posted on the progress after the discussion. So maybe something is missing, whatever the changes went in the SDN overlay, and we may need to put the changes or make similar changes in Win overlay. James, please correct me if I misunderstood that way.
You mentioned that you were meeting with some folks tomorrow. Is that just going to be on Zoom? Should we open that up to more people, or?
I'm not sure. So I was just trying to chat with the channel, especially we would like to talk to James and David. So I don't know if anybody interested. I'm open to send the invite as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can open up that to anybody else who's interested in the CNI space.
So
It's at the moment on Google Meet, but we can move it to Zoom
Oh,
if needed.
wherever it's fine. I don't think we.
Okay.
So what I can do is I can just post that in a new thread or the same our meeting invite information. So if anybody else wanted to attend.
Okay.
And also, Arvind, just another question, sorry. Arvind mentioned that another person from Microsoft was heavily involved in this Wing overlay. So I'm not sure, is it possible for him to attend the meeting? I'm not sure he's in the thread. He tagged him, Arvind tagged him, but just want to make sure that if he get the notification or he's not reachable. Do you guys have any idea?
Who is
So
that?
Mark Ellinger was talking about Jocelyn.
I think David works with Jocelyn. Do you know if Jocelyn would be around, David?
We can ask what he's moved on to working on a different team, so
I see.
still kind of in this space, but not as active anymore.
Yeah, the reason is there's this hybrid overlay component that we're using, and that was heavily worked on by Jocelyn.
Yeah, I see. Okay. Yeah, I think the person that I added, Keith, would be responsible for continuing that work.
Should we add Keith to that meeting tomorrow at least to make sure?
Yeah, unless he's already added. I know I added him to the original email thread. I thought everyone also.
Yeah,
but yeah,
so-
Keith should be there, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, so Ellinger, just add Keith to that meeting.
Okay,
and
because
thread also.
I remember you added some container knit at Microsoft that was bouncing back. For me, it says like it's not reachable. So let me check it also. And at the meantime, I'm going to post that meeting in the Slack channel, SIG Windows channel. So if anybody else wanted to attend, they can attend as well. I'll do that.
Okay, I'm just looking up the link to this, the thread in Slack too. I'm going to post it. We can put it into the meeting notes here, so people if they're watching the recording have some context. Is it this one that started on February 8th?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
it's on February.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully we'll be able to make some progress there. I think
you're
the
right.
right folks were just identified here too, so hopefully they can make the meeting.
So I'm going to post that in the same thread. I'll post it. The meeting invite. I'll do that.
I'm forwarding the meeting as well to Keith.
Are you doing that?
Yeah, I can
Okay,
do that.
thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's all I have.
I have two questions. One is, I think a couple of weeks ago, we discussed around the idea of a Windows unconference. Just want to convey to the community that Red Hat is very interested in, the agenda and, helping build out and supporting whatever way. And so glad to, work with whoever is going to be, driving that.
Yeah. So Wadron She Davis from our end was the one who's, I think, going to be driving that, and she is continuing to do that. I think she's been asking some of the folks who have hosted previous unconferences like that before, kind of where to get started. But we'll continue to kind of post updates as they come. And I'm glad to hear that there's more people willing to, or that there's interest in this area.
Cool, thank you. The second question was more around the support for Windows Server 2022. I believe you were going to update the upstream docs with some known bugs, known limitations. Just want to make sure that's going to be done.
Yeah, I was waiting to have an issue in the Windows containers repository to link to. Let me let me ping the folks or just go ahead and create that issue if that isn't there. That was on my to-do list for today.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay. I'll do this. I can do this offline. Okay, yep. So we'll update. Okay. Does anybody else have anything to talk about? I think Jane, you just added this.
Right. I just want to confirm because I think Windows Defender sometimes has this performance issue, and I think that's why here they disable some part of it. I just want to confirm from like a Windows expert, this is recommended, or any security concern, or
Let me take a look. I think that we've recommended to disable or to like add exclusions for like well-known and especially signed binaries. We'll have to follow up on this. Muzz, I'm probably gonna send this your way offline.
Please do. Yeah. We remember, Mark, probably you remember, right? Last year we worked with Defender team. We saw a bunch of things. So yeah, send it my way. I want to take a look.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Jane, we'll get back to you on this.
okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have anything? If not, I'm going to hand it over to James to do a demo. All right, James, I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I guess there's Prometheus Windows Exporter. It's meant to run on the Windows node, and it collects a bunch of different metrics about the node, including containers and CPU and all sorts of stuff. And it's configurable to collect various stats. Probably about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, somebody opened up a PR to add support to this inside Kubernetes. The issue that was happening there was that when you run the Windows exporter inside a container, it doesn't actually have access to the host because of process isolated containers. And so now that we have host process containers, we can run the Windows exporter directly on the host and get support. So I picked up the PR and kind of brought it along and gave it host process support here. And so this is the document on how this is actually done. There's a few notes that you need to have Kubernetes 1.22. You have to have a containerd 1.6 beta version. And then you also need to have the Windows host process container feature gate turned on for all this to work. The repo has the ability to build this container. So if you wanted to build your own, you can use this make command. The one thing I noticed was this merged the end of last week, I think, and the Prometheus Windows Exporter CI didn't actually build the nightly build of this container, so it's not available. So I'm using the one that I've built myself. I've opened up an issue to get that resolved with the Windows Exporter team. They just switched a bunch of CI around, and so it's all fairly new. But without further ado, we'll just kind of jump in. So the Windows Exporter is now a daemon set, so it runs on all of the Windows nodes, and it's configured so that it only runs on the Windows. The container itself mounts the config. So you can pass various config into the Windows exporter and enable different types of collectors and different services that you want to run against. And so that config is a config map in Kubernetes, and it gets loaded as an arg for the host process container. And then this is the image. It will be an official image once we get that build process resolved. You can see here on the spec, we have the security context, Windows host option, host process, and then we're just running it as system so that we have full access to all the various metrics that we need. And this isn't strictly necessary, but it helps make sure the firewall rule is opened up on the host for this particular port. You can drop this if you do that prior to that. And then once that's applied, you can, what I'm using is a tool called Kubernetes, which is the Prometheus operator set of scripts and dashboards and configuration here. And so I've installed this on the machine, and I'll show this to you in a second. Once that's configured, you can create one of these Windows exporter pod monitors. And this just says, this is the name of the job. And then it matches any pods that have this particular label, and it scrapes the endpoint for that pod. And so now I'll go over to my cluster. I have here, you'll see, oops, it's because I zoomed in. Let's do that again. Okay, so you'll see in the monitoring space, I have the Prometheus running, Grafana is running, the node exporter on Linux is running. All of that stuff that comes out of the Prometheus operator and the Kubernetes project is all already running. And so I can now apply the Windows exporter daemon set. And if I do that now, we'll see there's two pods that get created here. And that's because I have two Windows nodes up here that are Windows configuration, that are Windows nodes. And so it ran one on each node. And if I do that now, they're now both running. So I can do switch into the monitoring namespace and do k logs Windows exporter. And here you'll see that the exporter is actually running. This is, it's loading that configuration file. And for anybody that hasn't run host process containers, they get this special mount folder in the host. And that's what this kind of crazy long GUID is. And then one of the things that we added to the Prometheus was just to say, hey, you're running as who you're actually running as, because it would be easy to build this container and not apply the host process configuration. And it will give you a warning if you're running as container administrator or container user, because that's likely that you are running inside a process isolated container and not as a host process container. So you would actually get a warning here if you weren't running properly. And then you can see the various collectors, and that's kind of all the rest of the Prometheus exporter component. So the one other thing I need to apply here is the pod monitor. And when I do that, I have port forwarding enabled, so I can see Prometheus here. And if I go over to the targets, I should in a minute. Did it load? Yeah, it's creating the target, so it'll take a second here to pop up. I hope. sure I'm port ordering the right thing. There we go. So just took a second to find it. It's in an unknown state, and there'll be a scrape here in a minute, and we'll start to collect the Windows metrics. So yep, so there we go. It found the 2 nodes, and it's now scraping those from those. So we see that the instance is 10.1.06. So that's my node, the IP addresses of my nodes. So if I do k get nodes wide, I should see this is the Windows node, and I've got 104. And this is my other Windows node, and it's 106. So if I now come back here, I can see 106 and 104. And then finally, if I come back over here, and now I should be starting to collect information. So I can, this Windows CPU total time is one of the metrics that the node exporter puts out. And so I pinned it to the 106, and you can see I'm starting to pick it up over here. And this is practice for me doing earlier, make sure that this worked. And so there's another metric that I can, there's a bunch of different metrics, but if we do Windows CPU usage, total seconds, this is another one that gets put out by the Windows exporter. You'll see there's 2 containers here. These 2 containers are the pause container and an IIS application that I was running. You probably can't see it here, but the container ID is 6B59BD. And if and this one up here was DB49, you probably can't see that, it's pretty small. But if I come over to the node that these are running on, I can do HCS diag list, and I'll see both of those, those are those 2 containers that are running. And if I were to do CTR list containers, you'll see I have a bunch of host process containers running here. It's running Calico and things. But the IIS application is that DB49 container that is running here. And the pause container was the 6B, is this one right here. So the 6 pause. So those are correlating to the metrics that are being collected for those containers. So the
that's really
Windows.
Cool. Yeah, that's really cool, James. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all those metrics that this thing collects are all listed on the front thing here, so you can see them all. The containers here is in here, and then if you use the Prometheus mixin, there's a bunch of rules. You can actually get like, hey, it'll tie all the pods together, all the containers into pods, so you can actually get nice, pretty graphs on like the metrics of your pods and everything. So,
what do they? How do they? What does that mixin do?
It adds a bunch of Prometheus rules that map those that add labels to the container. So it'll tie a container to a pod, and
so you could like look. So you can get. So the metrics would have. So those host level metrics would then have labels associated with the pod's name or whatever,
yeah,
like the actual thing it's doing.
Yep. So to add it, like you can see, I think there's a pod in here. Yeah, these are the pod rules. So you could say Windows pod container available, and you'd actually see the number of pods that are running inside on each node, and you could make a nice, pretty graph with that. And this actually does that all out of the box for you if you apply these.
And is that mixin installed is there, I guess you just installed you just applied the daemon set, so you probably need to install
yeah, so if you go, I didn't deploy that mixin here, but if you go into docs in Windows here, this tells you how to do that.
Okay.
And then there's also a full example that applies those metric rules to it. There isn't one of these for host process yet. So if anybody's looking for improvement, I did open an issue to improve this for this particular project. but I didn't get around it. This uses the old way of installing it directly on the host and using static configs. Whereas now that we have the metric server actually running in the pod, we can scrape it and dynamically build that configuration.
Yeah,
very cool.
I also want to add that those rules are really important, because I think a lot of people will run Windows Exporter and then expect everything to work magically the way it works for Linux. Sometimes you have to map certain things that are Windows specific to make it a little bit more generic, so that when you go and look at your, I don't know, whatever dashboard that you're using, it actually matches up with what's there in Linux also. You don't need to do this always, but in some cases, you need to normalize what you're seeing in Linux versus what you're seeing in Windows.
Yeah, that's a good call out too.
Yeah, once you install those things, you get this pretty graph like this, like CPU and memory and all sorts of cool stuff. So. And Arvin, somebody from your team also helped out with some of this Cube Prometheus stuff as well, I think.
Yeah, that was Monse. Yeah, she helped out. Yeah, that's how we found out that, oh, we have to create these rules to kind of sort of normalize all of this. And some people forget to do this, right? They install Windows Exporter and they don't apply the rules, and then things don't appear the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, all you'll get is like individual containers. You won't get
exactly.
the pod metrics.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Any other questions? I think we're at time. So.
Is there a thing that ties all this information together, James? Like a diagram or something that sort of like, because like, you know, every time I look at Prometheus, it gets more and more complicated, and I used to understand it, but now I can't even remember all these bits anymore. Like to just get a basic Prometheus working, you're accessing API server metrics endpoint, like, you know what I mean? And then there's so many little weird things that get connected.
That Cube Prometheus project that James is showing here, I think does a really good job of getting you set up most of the way. If anything, I think this is probably the spot too.
And this has the Windows stuff in it.
It does. You have to opt into it, but there's a doc there on how to do that.
So, okay, so the docs on Kube Prometheus are a good like overview of the state of the art of how people use Prometheus nowadays.
Yeah, I think so. If you want to use the Prometheus operator, if you wanted to install it through a Helm chart or something, I don't know exactly how to do that. I haven't experimented with that.
I'm kind of like the opposite. I'm actually saying I actually like to just install Prometheus manually and then configure it one thing at a time, and that's what I don't know how to do anymore.
Yeah. So this will dump out all those YAML configs, and you can kind of, you know, figure that out. But I don't know if there's any.
So at this point, the normal canonical thing to do is to use the upstream Prometheus operator and understand how to sort of turn the knobs at that abstraction.
That's the approach that I've taken, but I don't know if that's for everybody. So.
Okay, cool. I just was, I'm just wondering. Yeah, ever since they came out with the Prometheus operator, I think things got a lot more confusing because people stopped documenting the manual way to do it. But maybe the right thing for me to do is just to grow up and start using this operator. What do you use, Arvind? Do you use the operator over there at Red Hat?
Yeah, there's something that gets installed as part of every cluster, and we sort of have to adopt what they're doing for Linux to work for Windows also.
Do you use the OpenShift operator catalog to install the Prometheus operator?
So that's all part of day one install of the cluster. So we don't have to do anything as a manual step. It's because these are collecting what do I say, node metrics. They're needed when you install the cluster on day one. So it's already present. And
yeah, but do you have your own operator that has your own YAML that sets all this stuff up, or do you use the Kube Prometheus operator in OpenShift?
We use a downstream version of that. So we don't take it directly, but we use a downstream version of that. It might be a little different. I don't know the details about it. But what we have to do for Windows is we have to apply those similar rules that James was showing.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, I'm trying to remember, it's been a while since we did this. Either we applied as part of our operator, or I think it's done as part of the main operator that is being installed. But those rules are really key for making everything to work.
Yeah. We I don't even remember what we do in Tanzo anymore. I mean, we ship Prometheus, but I don't know if we actually ship the operator as part of it. I'm kind of wondering myself. Sorry for
Yeah, I
for
need to
derailing
talk
this whole
for
thing,
SIG
James.
Windows. I think I'm gonna close out the meeting now. You guys can stay out and discuss this. But bye all. Thanks everybody for coming. See you next week.
Okay.